Hi, welcome to Video Respawn. I'm your host, David Xerin. Here today to talk about Mountain and an interesting article that I read on PCGamer about a game called Mountain. And this is Mountain right here. And essentially what there is there's a giant chasm between games media or media in general, like the LA Times and major publications and Steam gamers, right? People who actually play the game. We see this all the time on Metacritic, where there will be a game and they'll have a really high critic review and a really low user review. Oftentimes, sort of like a smear campaign or like Mass Effect in the ending, or something's made the community upset, or select narrative wells within the community upset in which they decide to lash out and fight the man and let their opinion be heard, which is fine, great. I'm very big on opinions, and I want to say this up front. I respect all the opinions that people have of this game, but PC Gamer does bring an interesting point to the table, that there is this divide between critics saying this is the most greatest game to come out in forever, which is an exaggeration, mind you, and Steam users who read this stuff and the excitement, and they're like, oh boy, I want to get a piece of this game. I'm gonna put my dollar down. I'm gonna play it, and well, so this is the game. First of all, before we continue any further, here's the game. It's a mountain. You can type in the keyboard, play sounds. Random items are spawned at random intervals. You can, use your mouse and look around, and zoom out, in space and stuff. And that's it. Yeah, oh, and the mountain talks with some profound things. I'm about to check out of this morning. All right. So I assume it's gonna move towards an afternoon time, or maybe it's just arbitrary. Who knows? So, I'm alone. Well, you have me, Mountain. I'm here for you. So basically, what's happening is that these game media people play it, and they're like, "Oh, Mountain breaks the mold of video games." The Atlantic. Cool. Well, let me tell you what the Mountain is. The Mountain is what we consider, or at least I consider, an art game. All right. Art games are nothing new. They're primarily flash games. There's some games that are hybrids, like Gone Home. That's an art game. It's trying to prove a point, or it's trying to express some kind of emotion, or make you think about something. But at the end of the day, the gameplay is just ancillary to the actual message. So the mold for video games has never existed, and if it has, people break it all the time. There was this World of Warcraft mold for MMOs, and now it's not holding up so well. Guild Wars 2 sort of led this great big renaissance, if you will, of games that aren't WoW. And Elder Scrolls and WildStar follow through, and we're slowly and surely seeing, the mold change, and it's with my hopes that with EverQuest Next, we're gonna see the entire, mold change. So, I don't know. Maybe the mold doesn't break; it just changes. Maybe the mold is more like Legos, and there's all these components and ideas and mechanics, and a lot of game developers took a WoW box set of Legos, and they, put it out there, and they said, this box of Legos right here is WoW. This is all the mechanics, ideas, and thoughts. And other people would come up and, they'd buy a box and, put it together, and they throw in their own ideas and call it their own game. And which is fine, there's a lot of respect, involved whenever you clone something like WoW, because you're saying that it's so good, and you wanna iterate on it, which is, I'm all for iteration on games, mind you. But what we have here is, they're saying this, at the beginning of the game, I find the idea cute. By the end, I am hypnotized. Now that quote's taken out of context. Let me just say that. If we go here to the actual article, it says, "By the end, I am hypnotized, bummed out when it is all done." Which, by the way, we beat the game. Congratulations. There's actually a combat scene where you can enter a certain sequence of notes, and the mountain comes under attack, and you have to do something. I'm not going to spoil it in case you want to, spend your $1. But yeah, anyway, if you want it spoiled, just check any Steam comment. But generally, it's very favorable, very, 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 very favorable for a game that's an idle game. And we talked about idle games. Here's an idle game. With a dragon instead of a mountain, or a dragon in a mountain on a rock. And you can feed him. You can interact with him. You've gained a 1% dragon boost. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, and you let this game run, and it spawns boxes and stuff. And if you're big on idle games, but you don't want one with like numbers or experience bars or whatever, it's kind of cool. Let it run, see what cool stuff falls in your mountain. Play with it every now and then. So that I give the developer credit, in the sense that the game is, it exists and it's great. But I definitely feel like game journalists need to be a bit more responsible, or the media when writing about games, to sort of put perspective in with a game. Guild Wars 2, for instance, it didn't get a lot of negative press, but there was, when people talked about it, they threw out their ideas of what was wrong, what was not right. It wasn't just this like sycophantic, like, oh, this is awesome, this is great, cool, this game is amazing. It was general opinion, and but then a game like Mountain comes around, and it's like, oh man, it was so awesome. I played it, and I just stared at my mountain, and it talked to me, and it said all of these like mind-blowing ideas to me. It said them to me, but at the end of the day, when I was done and I did everything in the game, I felt empty. That my mountain was complete, and I've done everything in 30 seconds, and that 30 seconds, that small bite of the game was I just wish I could go back. All an exaggeration, mind you, but still, it's just not cool. I don't think. You gotta like, sort of put games, compare them. There's a yardstick, right? And AAA like top tier titles are at the top, and a lot of those are Call of Duty and Battlefield, and as much as the general consensus of society is that both games are essentially like iterations on something from 400,000 million years ago, they're still at the top, and you have to respect that. And at the bottom is games like I don't know, Penn and Teller's Wild Ride, the thing where you drive the bus down the desert, and put it in context, being serious about it and wanting to beat it just for beating its sake. And you kind of have to kind of put the game where it belongs. And with Mountain, it fits down there with like Going Home. It's a great game. Is it worth the price? It's subjective. If you got amusement out of it, if you got $1, which, let's break $1 down to about 10 minutes of work, for let's say like 5 or 8 minutes worth of work. Yeah, good for you. Great. I'm 100% proud, but for a lot of people, an idle game that you can play for free online, built in what appears to be Unity, isn't worth $1. Much like a lot of people felt like Gone Home, even though it was a great game and very profound. You beat it in about 20 minutes, and it was something like $10-15. And it raised this question, you could go on YouTube and watch a playthrough of the game and experience almost or just as much emotion and realistically get it than, physically playing it. The same way with Mountain right here, you could let it run, and I could let it run, you could watch it and pretty much get the same experience. which just brings into question, are a lot of games media or people in the media that write about games gamers? Do they have that perspective? Do they know that Call of Duty's up here, Battletoads is down there, whatever. And this is this and this is that. And it's sort of like comparing Guild Wars 2 to Guild Wars to World of Warcraft to some dude's RPG Maker game, Um, I don't know. But for what it's worth, and I'll just summarize my point right here, I do feel like that gamers and games media should somehow start having a similar opinion at some point, We should have this situation of like, people feel like this is what the game is, and then there's a consensus because the media is gamers and the gamers are gamers, and they both all have similar opinions. Like with Mass Effect, maybe the ending was bad, and maybe that should be brought to attention. I think it was bad, but that's neither here nor there. But it's something to think about for a second. We in our day-to-day lives do read a lot of things about games, whether you're a gamer or not. You see it on the news, or it shows up on the internet, or your Facebook feed, in my instance. And I definitely think that there should be some kind of perspective applied, and that people should still have their opinions. If you think this is like Game of the Year, I mean, tell us, But, there should be that comparative bit, that's like, even though I think this, Steam users are very upset they paid $1 for what's essentially a screensaver, Well, it's neither here nor there, I think. At the end of the day, Metacritic's going to be Metacritic, and there's going to be, a 99 critic score and a negative 22 user rating for most games. In the same way that, there are going to be articles about games that are this game's amazing, it breaks the mold of games, even though it's essentially a screensaver. Which, no insult to Mountain, but again, I'm a gamer, and I do echo gamer sentiments, and I definitely do agree that this would work as a pretty awesome screensaver, but a game? Not so much. Anyway, if you like Video Respawn, let me know. If you don't, let me know. I'll care, let's say, 22.9% on the first one and 14.768 to the second power on the second one. I have no clue what either of those numbers mean, or how relative they are, but we'll just go with it. Until then, have a wonderful day.